Chapter 1 of Book 8 of Metaphysics by Aristotle. Concerning substance, then, I mean concerning that which is primarily entity, and to which all the rest of the categories of entity are referred, we have declared our sentiments. For according to the definition of substance are denominated the other entities, viz. Both quantity and quality, and the rest of the things that are predicated in this way. For all such will involve the definition of substance, as we have asserted in our earliest dissertations. But since entity is denominated partly as quiddity, or quality, or quantity, but partly according to capacity and actuality, and according to work, let us frame certain distinctions and definitions as regards both capacity and actuality, and in the first instance as regards that capacity or potentiality which is spoken of as such with especial precision, not, to be sure, that this is of service towards the advancement of our present design. For potentiality and actuality extend further than things merely predicated according to motion. But when we have spoken our opinions concerning this in our definitions, as regards energy, we shall make matters plain concerning the other points likewise. That indeed, therefore, potentiality is predicated in many ways, and that the possession of potentiality is expressed in many ways, has been settled by us elsewhere. But as many of these as are styled potentialities equivocally may be omitted, for some capacities or potentialities are denominated capacities by reason of a certain similarity, as in geometry we speak of potentiality in this way, and things that are potential and impotential we call such in regard of their being in a certain respect endued with such a capacity, or not being so. As many potentialities, however, as are referred to the same form or species, are all certain first principles, and are predicated in reference to one primary potentiality, which is a first principle of change in another body, so far forth as it is another. For there is a capacity, on the one hand, of being passive, which in the actual subject of passion constitutes a first principle of a passive state through the intervention of another body, so far forth as it is another. There is, on the other hand, the habit of impassivity, such as tends towards a condition which is worse, and the habit of corruption, which arises from the instrumentality of another body, so far forth as it is another. I mean a first principle capable of bringing about a change. For in all these definitions is inherent the definition of the primary potentiality just mentioned. And again, these potentialities are styled either those of action merely, or passion, or subsistence in an excellent manner. Wherefore also in the definitions of these are inherent, in a manner, the definitions of the former potentialities. It is therefore evident that there is, in a certain respect, one potentiality of action and passion. For a thing that is potential is such in regard of itself having the potentiality of passiveness, and in regard of another thing having it by reason of this. And in another respect there is a different potentiality. For one kind of potentiality resides in the patient. For on account of its having a certain first principle, and on account of matter, also, being a certain first principle, the subject of the passion is passive. And one thing undergoes a change by reason of another. For that which is fat is combustible also, but that which yields in this manner is a thing that is bruised, and in like manner also is it with other things. But another kind of potentiality resides in the agent, as the hot, and the capacity of house building are involved severally, the former in that which is capable of making a thing warm, and the latter in a person who is qualified to build a house. Wherefore, as far forth as a thing is naturally connected with itself, it in no wise undergoes a passive state itself by reason of its own agency, for it is one thing, and not anything else. And impotentiality, and that which is impotential (now, such is contrary to potentiality) is privation. Wherefore, every potentiality belongs to the same, and subsists according to the same subject, with impotentiality. Privation, however, is predicated in many ways. For privation is to be found where a thing does not possess something else, and, though fitted by nature for the possession of such, may yet not have it either entirely, or when it is fitted by nature. And we say either, after this manner, that it is privation, for instance, altogether so, or yet even in some certain respect or other. And in the case of some things, if being by nature adapted to possess a thing, they may not yet have such by reason of violence, we say that these are subjects of privation in this respect. Chapter 2. Since, however, such first principles of potentiality are inherent partly in things that are inanimate, and partly in things that are animate and contained in soul, and in that portion of the soul which possesses reason, it is evident that also of potentialities some will be devoid of reason, whereas others will be accompanied with reason. Wherefore, all the arts, even such as are constructive, as well as the sciences, are potentialities, for they constitute first principles, which are causes of change in another subject, so far forth as it is another. And all those potentialities, indeed, that are accompanied, or involve any connection with reason, are productive of contraries. Each of those, however, that is devoid of reason is alone productive of one result, as, for instance, that which is hot is productive of the promotion of heat merely, and the medicinal art of disease and health. And a cause of this is the following, that scientific knowledge is reason, and the same reason makes manifest the result produced and its privation, though not after the same manner. And in one way is this reason that which creates this knowledge for both, yet in another it affords greater knowledge of the thing in existence than of its privation. Wherefore it is requisite that such sciences as these should involve a knowledge of contraries, but that of the one it should be thus essentially, and of the other not essentially. For also reason is a knowledge of the one essentially, but of the other after a certain manner according to accident. For by negation and ablation it makes manifest the contrary. For primary privation is that which is contrary, and this is an ablation of the other. Since, however, contraries are not inherent in the same thing, now science is a capacity in respect of the possession of reason, and the soul also possesses a first principle of motion, hence the healthy or salubrious produces health only, and that which is capable of promoting heat, warmth, and of promoting cold, chilliness. But the scientific person produces both, for of both no doubt has reason a knowledge, but not in the same manner, and this reason subsists in a soul which possesses a first principle of motion. Wherefore soul will move both from the same first principle, having effected coherence towards the same thing. Wherefore the things which are potential, or endowed with capacity according to reason, produce contraries to the productions of that which is potential without reason. For one first principle is comprised in reason. But it is evident that also upon the power of action and passion in an excellent manner there follows the power merely of action or of passion, but in this latter the former is not invariably to be found. For he that acts well must needs also be an agent, but where a person only is an agent, it is not necessary also that he should act well. Chapter 3. But there are some who say, for instance those of the Megaric school, that where there is energy, there only is there potentiality, or capacity, but that where there is no energy, there is no potentiality. For example, that the person who does not actually build has not the capacity of building, but that he has the capacity of building when he actually builds, and that it is in like manner also with other things. Now, the absurdities which ensue with these speculators it is not difficult to discover. For it is evident that neither will he be a builder if he does not actually build, for the being of a builder consists in the possession of the capacity of building, and in like manner also it is the case with the rest of the arts. If, therefore, it is impossible for one to possess arts of this kind, if he has not at any time received instruction in them and acquired them, and not to be in the possession of them, unless at some time or other he lose them, for one may do so either through forgetfulness, or a certain affection, or time, for as to the thing itself, that at any rate has not fallen into decay, for it is in existence always. This being the case, when there may be a cessation of operation on the part of such a one, he will not have in possession the art. And how will he again forthwith proceed to build in resuming the art which he had lost? And in like manner will it be the case also with things that are inanimate. For there will be neither cold, nor hot, nor sweet, nor in short anything cognizable by sense, when such is not an object of sensation. Wherefore it will happen with these philosophers that they should put forward the same theory with Protagoras. But unquestionably neither will a man possess any sense unless he perceives or energizes. If, therefore, that animal is blind which does not possess the power of vision, though naturally adapted to see, and when it is naturally adapted to see, and further, as it is thus naturally adapted, in such a case the same individuals oftentimes during the same day will be blind, and in like manner deaf. Further, if that which is impotential be that which has been deprived of capacity, that which has not been generated to be generated will be a thing that is impossible. But one who says that what is devoid of a capacity of being generated either actually exists, or will do so, shall affirm what is false, for this would signify what is impotential. Wherefore, these assertions overturn both the existence of motion and of generation, for that which stands will always stand, and that which sits will always remain in a sitting posture. For a man will not rise up if he be sitting down, for it will be impossible for that to rise up which would not possess the capability at least of rising up. If, therefore, it may not be possible to affirm these things, it is evident that potentiality and energy are something different from each other. Those theories, however, make potentiality and energy to be the same, and thus it is not a small thing which they are seeking to overturn. Wherefore it happens that a thing admits of being and yet may not be, and that a thing admits of not being and yet may be. In like manner also is it with the rest of the categories. That which is endued with the capacity of walking yet may not walk, and that which does not walk may yet be able to walk. This, however, is a thing that is potential, in which, when the energy is present of that of which it is said to have the capacity, there will not be in existence anything that is devoid of potentiality. Now, I mean, for instance, if one is able to sit, and it so happens that such a one sits, if this sitting posture will have an existence in the case of such a one, nothing impossible or impotential will ensue. And if anything may be moved, or may impart motion, or remain at rest, or impede a body in its course, or be in existence, or be generated, or not be in existence, or not be generated, the case will be similar. But the name energy, which is combined with actuality, and tends towards other things, has proceeded forth from motions principally, for motion in an eminent sense appears to constitute the energy of a thing. Wherefore also to nonentities they do not attribute the having motion imparted to them, but certain other categories, as for instance, things which are nonentities are intelligible and desirable objects, but are not in motion. And this is the case because nonentities in energy will, however, subsist in energy. For of nonentities, some are nonentities in capacity, but yet have no existence because they do not exist actually. Chapter 4. Now, if the potential be that which it has been declared to be, upon which energy is consequential, it is evident that it is not possible that it be true to say that this particular thing is endued with a capability of being, but yet will not exist, so that on this supposition what things impotential are would elude our search. Now I say, for instance, this is just as if any one affirm it to be possible that the diameter of a square be commensurate with its side, although this commensurability will never be established, not reckoning that it is a thing that is impossible, because nothing hinders anything that is potential in regard of existence and of generation from not being, nor being likely to exist. But that follows necessarily from the points laid down, if also we should suppose a thing may be, or may be generated, which is not in existence. I admit, but yet is a thing that is endued with the capacity of being, because there will be in such a supposition as this nothing that is impossible. But at any rate it will be admitted that this result will ensue, for allowing the commensurability of the diameter, the inference must follow that even are equal to odd numbers, which is an impossibility. For what is false is not the same also with that which is impotential. For that you now are in a standing position is false, to be sure, but is not a thing that is impossible. And at the same time also is it evident that upon the supposition of the existence of A, B must needs exist likewise, and if A exist as a thing that is potential in regard of being, it follows that also B must needs be a thing that is potential in regard of being. For if there be no necessity for its being a thing potential in regard of being, nothing hinders that which is a thing possible to be from not being at all. Now let A be a thing that is possible to be. Therefore, since A is a thing possible to be, if A be admitted as existing, nothing impossible to be would actually ensue. However, B, at any rate, must necessarily exist, but this was impossible. Grant, therefore, that it is impossible. If, then, it were impossible for B to exist necessarily, it is necessary that it should be impossible for A to exist. But then A was possible, therefore will B be so likewise. If, then, A be possible, B also will be possible, if they subsist in such a way as that in consequence of the existence of A, B necessarily exists also. If, therefore, on the supposition that the thing signified by A, B, subsist in this manner, it may not be a thing possible for this to take place in reference to B in this way, neither will A, B, subsist in the manner that has been laid down. And if on the supposition of the possibility of the existence of A, it is necessary that B also should exist as a thing that is possible to be, supposing then A to exist, it is necessary also that B exist. For that it is possible from necessity for B to exist, if it be possible for A to exist, signifies as follows, that if A exists, and when it exists, and as far as it is a thing that is possible to exist, that then, and in this way also, that is necessary in regard of the existence of B. Chapter 5. And whereas of all existing potentialities, some are congenital, as those of the senses, but others are developed from habit, as the ability of playing on a flute, and some from discipline, as capacity in the arts, it is necessary that those that are developed from habit and reason should be acquired by repeated exercises of previous activity, but that those which are not of this description, and such as are concerned with passivity, should not necessarily be acquired in this way. Since, however, that which is endued with potentiality is able to effect something, both the term sometimes and the term somehow must one add in the definition, and as many things else as are consequential to this. and some things that subsist according to reason do not possess the potentiality of imparting motion, and their potentialities are accompanied with reason, whereas as regards other things that are irrational and their potentialities irrational, those also it is necessary should subsist in an animated creature, but these in both. Now, this being the case, in respect of potentialities of such a description as this, it is requisite, when as far as they are endued with capacity in this way, the passive and the productive approximate towards each other, that one set of them should be active and the other passive. But it is not necessary that this should take place with those, I mean with rational potentialities. For as regards all of these, each one is productive of one thing, whereas those are productive of contraries. Wherefore this will at the same time produce contraries, a thing, however, that is impossible. It is necessary, then, that there be something else which may be predominant, and this I call propension, or free will. For whatsoever is the object of a particular propension, this will that propension authoritatively or rightfully accomplish, when, as far as it is endued with capacity, it may subsist and approximate unto the passive. Wherefore, that which is endued with capacity according to reason must altogether compass its object when it feels an appetite after that unto which it has a capability of attaining, and so far as it has this capability. Now, the power to do or accomplish anything subsists when that which is passive is present, and is so disposed, and if this be not the case, there will be no power to accomplish it. For in the event of none of those things that are extrinsic offering any obstruction, there is no further necessity for adding these words, quote, nothing extrinsic offering obstruction, close quote, into the definition, for it involves potentiality as it belongs to a capacity of action, yet it is not so altogether. But when things are disposed in some such manner as that in their case will also external impediments be removed, for these are taken away, I mean some of those distinctive terms that are contained in the definition, wherefore neither will an appetite accomplish two things, or contrary things, even though at the same time it may feel disposed, or be actuated by an inordinate desire to accomplish them. For it does not involve power over their attainment in this way at the same time, nor is there present the power of the simultaneous accomplishment of such, since those objects of pursuit over which appetite has control it will accomplish in this manner. Chapter 6. But since we have spoken concerning potentiality, such as subsists according to motion, let us frame some definitions and distinctions regarding energy, both as to what energy or activity is, and what sort of a thing it is. For the nature of that which is potential or endued with capacity, likewise at the same time will be apparent to those who make a division in this matter, because we not only say that this is a thing endued with potentiality or capacity, which is fitted by nature to impart motion to something else, or to have motion imparted to itself by something else, either viewed simply or in a certain manner, but we also assert this as being the case after a different mode. Wherefore, in our investigations, we shall also treat of these points. The existence of the thing, however, as the energy, does not subsist in such a way as when we speak of a thing in potentiality. Now, we mean by a thing subsisting in potentiality, for instance, mercury in the wood, and the half in the whole, because it can be taken away from the whole. And we term that a scientific person in capacity, even though not actually engaged in speculation, provided only such may be endued with a capacity for speculative pursuits. And we mean by a thing subsisting in energy. Now, by an induction of singulars is the assertion evident which we wish to make, and it is not expedient that we should seek after a definition for everything, but it is sufficient to perceive at a glance that which is analogous. Now I say, by a thing subsisting in energy, we mean that it should be as a person engaged in building stands in relation to that which is fit for being built, and the wakeful to the sleeper, and one who sees to one whose eyes are closed, but who nevertheless possesses the power of vision, and as that which involves a separable subsistence from matter to matter, and as that which has been wrought by art to that which is unwrought. After this mode, then, is energy compared with capacity or potentiality. By one portion, however, of this difference, let energy be distinguished, and that which is endued with potentiality by the other. All things, however, are not said to subsist in energy in a similar way, but either analogically, as this thing in this, or relatively to this, and that thing in this particular thing, or relatively to this particular thing. For some things are as motion in respect of potentiality, but other things are as substance in respect of a certain matter. But the infinite and the void and such like things are said to subsist both in potentiality and energy after another manner, different from many entities, as, for example, that which sees, and that which walks, and that which is seen. For sometimes do these things admit of being verified, and simply verified, for the one is an object to be seen because it is seen, but the other because it is endued with a potentiality of being seen. The infinite, however, does not subsist in potentiality after such a mode, as it is likely to be in energy when it involves a separable subsistence. But it does in knowledge, for infinite divisibility is the cause which these persons assign for the subsistence in potentiality amounting to this energy, not, however, in respect of its being made to involve a separate subsistence. But since none of those doings of which there is a termination constitutes an end, but only some of those that are performed in regard of the end, as the actual end of inducing emaciation is emaciation, and when these happen to induce or promote a state of emaciation, they are in this way in motion, not being inherent, as the things on account of which the motion subsists. Now, on such a supposition, these things do not constitute the method of doing a thing, or at any rate, such a method as is perfect, that is, involves an end. For they do not constitute an end, but in that, I mean, the motion, are inherent the end and the method of doing a thing, as, for example, a man sees, but also he exercises thought and employs his understanding, and has employed his understanding, but he does not receive instruction, and has received instruction, neither is he in a sound state of health, and has he been restored to health. He may live properly, and has lived properly, but also he enjoys the felicity of a regular life, and has enjoyed this felicity. And if this be not the case, he ought at some time or other to intermit, as when he may induce emaciation. He does not, however, produce this state at present, but he lives and has lived. Therefore is it proper to denominate some of these aforesaid conditions as motions, and some of them as energies or activities. For every motion is imperfect, as for instance emaciation, learning, walking, building, and these are motions, even imperfect ones at least. For a person does not walk at the same time that he has walked, nor does a builder construct a house at the same time that he has built one, nor is a thing generated simultaneously with its having been generated in time past, or is motion imparted simultaneously with the communication of motion in time past. But it is a different thing as regards the communication and the reception of motion. Now, a person, to give an illustration, has seen and sees the same thing at the same time, and exercises his understanding, and has exercised his understanding simultaneously in regard of the same thing. A thing of this kind, indeed, do I denominate energy and activity, but I call that motion. Therefore, as to the subsistence of a thing in energy, both what it is and what sort of a thing it is, from these and such like statements let this point be evident to us. Chapter 7. And when it is that each thing subsists in potentiality, and when it does not, this point must now be determined by us. For a thing does not subsist in potentiality at any time whatsoever indifferently. Thus, for instance, earth. Is it, pray, man in potentiality, or is it not? But is this the case rather when seed already is generated? Nor even the case somehow perhaps then. Just then, as neither by the medicinal art everything would be indifferently reduced to a sound state, nor from chance, but there is something which is endued with a capacity of health, and this is that which subsists in a healthy condition potentially. But the definition of that which by reason of an exercise of intellect is in a state of generation, in a condition of actuality, from such a cause as exists potentially, such a definition may be discovered when the process of generation is accomplished by one in the exercise of volition, and in a case where no impediment is offered by external obstructions. Now, this takes place in the instance adduced in the case of a person being reduced to a sound state of health, when there is no obstruction offered by those things that reside in himself. And the case is similar with a house also in potentiality, if there is no hindrance to its construction as a house from obstacles discoverable in the builder of that house, or the matter of it. And if there is not that which it is requisite should be added, or subtracted, or changed, this constitutes a house in potentiality. And this is the case likewise with the rest of those things of which there is a first principle of generation that is extrinsic, and in regard of as many things doubtless as are contained in the thing itself in possession of them, whatever will subsist by means of this, in the absence of external impediments offering any hindrance. For example, the seed does not as yet subsist in potentiality, for it is necessary that it also accomplish a change in another body. But when now, by means of its own first principle, it may subsist as a thing of this kind, it is now this thing in potentiality, and that requires a different first principle, just as earth is not yet a statue in capacity or potentiality. For when it is being changed, it will become brass. But what we are speaking of seems to be not this particular thing, but a thing composed of this or that material, just as a chest is not wood, but wooden, nor is the wood earth, but earthy. Again, if earth, after this manner, is not anything else, but is termed derivatively, or a thing that is composed from that material, in such a case, that which subsists invariably in capacity simply is that which is subsequent, just as the chest is neither earthy nor earth, but wooden. For this amounts to the subsistence of the chest in capacity, and this is the matter of the chest, simply considered as of that which is viewed simply, but of this particular chest is this particular piece of wood the matter. If, however, there is something primary that is not any longer denominated according to something else, as a thing composed from that material, this is primary matter. For example, if earth is of air, and air is not fire, but composed of fire, in this case fire is the primary matter of earth, as this certain particular thing and substance. For in this respect is the universal different from the subject in regard of being the one, this certain particular thing contrasted with the other which is not. For, to give an example, man and body and soul are each the subject of passive conditions. The passive condition, however, is the being musical and white. But when the musical is ingenerated as a capacity, that thing is not styled a musical capacity, but a thing that is musical. And man is not termed whiteness, but a thing that is white, nor walking or motion, but a thing which walks or is moved, just as a thing that is composed of something else. Now, as regards then as many things as are denominated in this manner, that which is last is substance. But in respect of as many things as are not styled in this way, but of which a certain species and this certain particular thing are predicated, that which is last is matter, and a material substance, and therefore it happens correctly that what is composed of the material of something else is not predicated according to its matter and its passive conditions. for both of these are indefinite. When, therefore, a thing must be styled as that which subsists in capacity, and when it does not subsist thus, has been declared. Chapter 8. Since, however, it has been determined in how many ways that which has a priority of subsistence is predicated, it is evident that energy or activity is prior to potentiality. Now, I mean by potentiality not merely a definite potentiality, which is styled an alternative first principle in another body, so far forth as it is another, but in general every first principle which is the originator of motion or of rest. For nature also may be ranked in the same genus with potentiality, for she is a first principle which is fit to be the cause of motion, not, however, in another body, but in itself, so far forth as it is itself. Therefore, prior to every principle of this sort is energy, or activity, both in definition and in substance, but it is also in a certain respect prior in duration, and in a certain respect it is not so. That indeed, therefore, it is prior in definition is evident. For that which is potential in regard of its possibility of energizing or assuming a state of activity, such is a thing that is primarily endued with capacity or potentiality. For example, I speak of one that is skilled in building, now, I mean one that has a capacity of building, and I speak of one that is able to see, and I mean one that possesses the capacity of seeing, and of a thing that may be seen, as that which involves the capacity of being seen. And the same reasoning also holds good as regards other things. Wherefore, the definition and knowledge of energy must needs pre-exist the definition and knowledge of potentiality. But energy, likewise, is in time prior to capacity after this mode, namely, the priority of that which actively accomplishes the same thing in species, but not in number. Now, I mean to say this, that in the case of this particular man existing at present according to energy, and in the case of the corn, and the horse, and the person who sees, prior in time are the matter, and the seed, and that which is able to see, which in potentiality constitute man, and corn, and one who sees, but are not as yet these in energy. Prior, however, to these in time are those different things that subsist in energy, and from which these have been generated. For always from an entity in capacity arises, or is generated, an entity in energy by means of an entity in energy, as man is generated from man, a musician by means of a musician, on the condition of something that is primary in its nature always imparting motion. The moving power at present, however, subsists in energy or activity, but it has been declared in our disquisitions concerning substance that everything that is generated from something and by something, and that this is the same in species. Wherefore also it seems to be impossible that a builder be a person not likely to have built anything, or a harpist to be one who has not harped anything. For one who learns to play upon the harp learns to play upon the harp by actually playing upon the harp. It is also the case, in like manner, with other artists. Whence arose the argument, by refutation, of the sophists, that one who is not in possession of scientific knowledge will accomplish the mastery of that about which such scientific knowledge is conversant, for the learner of a science is not in possession of it. But in reply to this, we may observe that from the fact that something of that which is being produced or generated has been produced, and that in general something of that which is being moved has been moved, now this is evident according to what has been proved in our disquisitions concerning motion. The learner also in this case must needs possess something, perhaps of scientific knowledge. But then also by this it is at any rate evident that energy in this way likewise is prior to potentiality in regard of generation and time. But unquestionably it is also prior in substance at least in the first place indeed then, because those things that are subsequent in generation are prior in form and substance, as a man to a child, and a human being to seed. For now the one possesses the form, but the other does not. And in the second place, this is so because everything that is being produced advances towards a first principle and an end. For the final cause is a first principle, and the generation or production is on account of the end. But energy is an end, and on account of this is potentiality assumed. For not in order that they may have the power of vision do animals see, but they have the power of vision that they may see. In like manner also, persons are in possession of the building art, or capacity that they may actually build, and of the speculative art that they may devise systems of speculation. They do not, however, devise speculative systems that they may have the speculative capacity, unless those who do so for the sake of meditation. Yet these by no means speculate absolutely, but they either speculate in this manner, or the fact is so that they have not in any wise an occasion to speculate. Moreover, matter subsists in potentiality because it may advance onwards to form, but when at least it subsists in energy, then doth it subsist in form. In like manner also is it the case with other things, and those of which the end is motion. Wherefore, as those engaged in teaching by showing, in the way of example, one energizing, say, their pupil, think that they have adduced the end, it is so with nature in like manner. For if this be not the case, a circumstance, like the mercury of Paso, will take place. For scientific knowledge would be obscure as to whether it might be internal or external, as was the case with Paso's Hermes likewise. For an end is the work, and the work constitutes the energy. Wherefore the name energy is denominated according to the work, and converges towards actuality. And since of some things that which is ultimate is the use, as for example, of the power of vision, the act of vision, and besides this, no other work is produced different from the power of vision, yet in certain things is there something else generated. For example, from the art of house building a house is produced in addition to the act of building, notwithstanding that energy, nevertheless, will be the end of potentiality in both instances, to be sure, though it is more the end of it in the latter than in the former. For building is contained in that which is being built, and is generated and exists at the same time with the house. Of as many things, therefore, as there is something different, namely, that which is being produced from their use, of these doth there subsist the energy in that which is being constructed, just as both the building resides in that which is being built, and the weaving in that which is being woven. In like manner also is it the case with other things, and in general doth motion subsist in that to which motion is being imparted. Of as many things, however, as there is not some different work beside the energy, in these is energy inherent, as, for instance, the act or power of seeing resides in the person who sees, and theory in the theorizer, and vitality or life in the soul. Therefore also is happiness resident in the soul, for it also constitutes a certain sort of vitality. Wherefore is it evident that substance and form are each of them a certain energy, and therefore according to this reasoning it is evident that in substance energy is prior to potentiality, and as we have stated, one energy invariably is antecedent to another in time, up to that which is primarily and eternally the moving cause. But assuredly also in a more strict and important sense is energy prior to capacity. For the things that are eternal are in substance prior to things that are perishable, Yet nothing subsisting in potentiality is everlasting, and a reason of this is the following. Every potentiality is at the same time a potentiality of its contradiction. For that which is not endued with the capacity of existing will not subsist in anything, but everything that is endued with capacity admits of not energizing. Accordingly, that thing the existence of which is potential admits of both being and not being. The same thing, then, is that which is potential, or endued with a capacity of both being and not being. But that thing, the non-existence of which is potential, admits of not being, and that which admits of not being is subject to decay, either simply, or it is not this very thing, the admissibility of whose non-existence is affirmed, either according to place, or according to quantity, or according to quality, but simply is a thing exposed to corruption according to substance. None, then, of those things that are simply incorruptible is an entity in potentiality simply considered, but in a certain respect there is no hindrance to this being so, for instance, according to quality, or the place where. All things, then, subsist in energy, nor even on the supposition of things being from necessity are these things, however, primary, for unless these were so, there would be nothing so. Nor therefore, again, supposing there is any eternal motion, does such a motion subsist in capacity, nor supposing that there is anything that is being eternally moved, such a thing that is being moved does not subsist according to capacity, unless so far as it proceeds from a certain quarter, or towards a certain direction. There is no hindrance, however, to the subsistence of the matter of this. Wherefore, the sun and stars and the entire firmament perpetually energize. No apprehension also is there lest at any time they may come to a standstill, which dread overwhelms some of the natural philosophers. For neither are the heavenly bodies wearied in this operation of revolving, for their motion does not happen to subsist in regard of the capacity of the contradiction of those, as, for example, is the case with things subject to decay, so as to render the continuity of the motion a laborious operation. For substance, which is matter and potentiality, and does not subsist in energy, is the cause of this. There is, however, an imitation between things incorruptible and those that are in a state of change, for instance, earth and fire. For these also invariably energize, seeing that they involve motion essentially and in themselves. But all the rest of the potentialities about which we have discoursed, from the distinctions and definitions that have been framed, it is evident are conversant about contradiction. For that which is endued with the capacity of imparting motion in this particular way can also do so in another way, and not in this way. I mean, as many things at any rate as subsist as potentialities according to a rational principle. Potentialities, however, that are devoid of reason in respect of presence and absence will as the same be conversant about contradiction. If, then, there are certain natures of such a sort, or substances of such a description, as those speculators who have been engaged in such theories affirm ideas to be, something would there be which would be skilled in scientific knowledge in a greater degree than science itself, and something would be much more moved than motion itself. For the former rather are energies, but the latter are potentialities of the former. That therefore energy is a thing prior both to potentiality and every alternative first principle is evident. Chapter 9. But that also energy is both superior and more excellent than potentiality, however excellent, is evident from these statements. For as many things as are denominated according to the being potential, as far as these are concerned, it is the same thing the being what is potential in regard of contraries. For instance, that which is said to be endued with a capacity of health and sickness is the same thing, and that too at the same time, for there is the same capacity, or potentiality of being in a sound state of health, and being indisposed, and of being at rest, and in motion, and of building, and of demolishing what is built, and of being built, and falling into ruin. The capacity, then, of accomplishing contraries exists at the same time, but the actual subsistence of these contraries at the same time is a thing that is impossible, and it is a thing that is impossible that contrary energies be also present at the same time, for instance, in the case of being healthy and being indisposed. Wherefore, either of these must needs be that which is good, and it must in like manner be possible that this be the case with both or neither. Energy, accordingly, is the more excellent of the two. There is, however, a necessity that, as regards that which is bad, the end and energy should be worse than the potentiality, for that which is endued with capacity, as regards both the contraries, is the same thing. It is evident, then, that what is evil is not anything independent of the things themselves, for that which is evil is by the constitution of nature subsequent to that which we term potentiality. Accordingly, neither in those things which subsist from a first principle, and those that are everlasting existences, is there anything that is either evil, or anything in the shape of imperfection, or aught that has been actually reduced to decay. For a tendency towards decay or corruption belongs to things that are evil. But mathematical figures are also discovered as subsisting in energy, for persons discover such in the act of division, and if such had been divided in twain, these mathematical figures would have been apparent, but now are they inherent potentially. Why, let me ask, has a triangle angles equal to two right angles? Because the angles about one point are equal to two right angles. If, therefore, the line about the side be produced, to one who merely glances at the figure the thing is at once obvious. Why, too, in a semicircle is the angle universally a right angle? Because if there are three equal right lines, or even two at the base, and one right line raised thereupon from the central point, the thing will be obvious to anyone at a glance, provided he be a person that has some knowledge of mathematics. Wherefore it is evident that mathematical diagrams, subsisting as they do in potentiality, are discovered when they are being reduced to energy, and the cause of this is the following, that understanding constitutes the energy, wherefore from energy springs potentiality, and on account of this circumstance, persons engaged in doing anything are acquainted with that thing, for subsequent in regard of production is energy, I mean such as subsists according to number. Chapter 10. Since, however, entity and non-entity are denominated partly in accordance with the figures of the categories, and partly in accordance with the capacity or the energy of these, or in accordance with contraries, but since that which is entity, in the strictest sense of the word, is what is true or false, and this in the case of things consists in composition or division, so that one can verify his assertion who considers that which has been divided to be divided, and that which has been compounded to be compounded, but he speaks falsely who, when either things are or when they are not, makes assertions about them in a contrary way to that in which they actually subsist. Seeing then that this is the case, the thing is termed true or false, for it is fitting that we should take into consideration what this is which is termed true or false. For it is not on account of a true supposition on our parts of your being white that you are in reality white, but on account of your being white, we who make this assertion as to your whiteness can verify our assertion. If, therefore, some things are invariably compounded and involve an impossibility of being divided, but if other things are perpetually in a state of division and are not endued with a capacity of being put together again, and if some things are the recipients of contraries, In such a case, actual existence is the being compounded, and the being one thing, but non-existence, the not being compounded, but the being more than one thing. Respecting, then, admissible or contingent natures, the same opinion becomes false and true, and this is the case with the same definition, or discursus, and they involve the possibility of true assertions being made of them in one instance, but false assertions in another. Regarding, however, things that are devoid of a potentiality of being disposed otherwise than they are, a thing in this case is not generated, so as at one time to be true, but at another false, but these things are invariably true and false. And therefore, in regard of incomposite natures, what, let me ask, is the being or not being, and what the true and the false in respect of these? For it is not a thing that is compounded so that it actually involves existence when it may be in a state of composition, but does not involve existence when it may subsist in a state of division, as a piece of white wood, or the incommensurability of the diagonal of a square with its side. Neither will the true and the false in like manner be still inherent also in those things, I mean incomposite natures. Or shall we say that, as neither that which is true in regard of these, so neither is their actual existence the same, but the one is that which is true, while the other is that which is false? Contact and assertion give us that which is true, for not the same thing is affirmation with assertion. Not, however, to pass into contact amounts to ignorance, for deception about the nature of anything has no existence, save by accident. In like manner also is it in the case of substances that are uncompounded, for deception in regard of them is not a thing that is possible. And all such substances subsist in energy, not in potentiality, for if they subsisted in potentiality, they would be generated, and in process of time would be corrupted. But in the present instance, the actual entity is not generated, nor is it reduced into corruption, for it would be generated from something. And as regards whatsoever things, therefore, that amount to the existence of any certain particular thing, and its subsistence in energy or activity, as regards these, I say, there is no possibility of labouring under deception, but either one understands them or he does not. But the inquiry as to the nature of anything is being instituted by us in respect of these natures, as to whether there are things of this sort at all or not. And the fact is, the existence of a thing is as that which is true, and its non-existence as that which is false. In one way, if it is that which is compounded, it is true, whereas in the other, if it is not a composite nature, it is false. And in another way, if we suppose it to exist in this way, it is true, but if not in this way, it is not true. Now, that which is true amounts to the intellectual apprehension of these, but that which is false does not exist, nor does it amount to deception, but ignorance. Not, however, such as may be assimilated unto blindness. For blindness is just as if one, in short, did not possess the capacity of intellectually apprehending any subject. And it is also evident that, respecting things that are immovable, there is no deception as to the time when of their existence, supposing that one consider them as things that are immovable, for instance, the triangle, unless viewed as that which is subject to mutation. A mathematician will not consider as being at one time in possession of angles equal to two right angles, but at another not so, for it would undergo a certain mutation. Yet he might consider one thing in this point of view, but not another, for example, that there be no even number, first, or that some are so, but that other numbers are not so. In regard, however, of one thing in number, we cannot expect that he should entertain this opinion, for no longer would he do so as regards certain things, yet not as regards others, but he will speak truth or falsehood so far as he makes assertions of it as a thing that is invariably disposed in this way. End of chapter 10 and end of book 8.